Good evening, I'm Katerina Georgieva. Here's what's making news right now.
Community water fluoridation is both very effective and very safe at the recommended levels. It might take, anywhere between 6 months to a couple of years before people start noticing a difference.
The place has been on lockdown, I think for the last week or so. So my dad has been confined to his room for at least the last 7 days.
The circumstances of the crash just make it so much more tragic. The fact that there were so many minds on that plane.
Thanks for joining us. Fluoride is returning to tap water in Windsor, reintroduced after council voted to remove the mineral 8 years ago. Chris Ensing now on why it's making a comeback and what it means for your teeth.
Windsor's water is award-winning, some of the best tasting in Ontario.
And we're proud of that, and we're happy to be able to provide that to our customers.
On Wednesday, it won't just taste good, it will also do more for your oral health.
Well, fluoride itself helps prevent dental decay, and dental decay is the second most common disease that affects children. They're next to the common cold. And a significant amount of time is lost from school because of dental issues.
Fluoride is a natural mineral that makes the outer layers of your teeth stronger while decreasing your risk of cavities. Its major benefit, limiting tooth decay.
And when they took the fluoride out, we saw an increase in the decay rate. And I'm very glad now to hear they're putting it back in.
Windsor added fluoride to the water for decades until council elected to remove the mineral in 2013, voting against recommendations from the local health unit and Dentist Association to continue fluoridation. Council revisited the topic in 2018, the same time the health unit released a report saying that children's oral health in Windsor, Essex worsened between 2011 and 2017.
We know in Windsor, Essex that our oral health disease and issues related to oral health are significant here and much worse than the province. And as well, just given the pandemic, we know that access certainly to oral health has been an issue. Our oral health outcomes, while we don't have the data we had a few years ago, I can't imagine that they've improved, especially with the limitations in access that we've seen over the past year or two.
Council voted to add fluoride back into the water. Frank says adding it to tap water is the right call and the consensus among the medical community.
People are entitled to their opinions. However, facts are facts. And quite simply, the science is very strong. There have been thousands of studies done on the effect of community water fluoridation, and none of the credible studies have ever shown that fluoride is harmful at the recommended level. And yet, it is very effective at preventing tooth decay.
And when in Frank, don't expect anyone to notice any changes immediately. The water shouldn't taste different, and it will look the same. It will cost the city about $100,000 a year to add annually after a one-time cost of about $800,000. Chris Ensing, CBC News, Windsor.
Seniors in long-term care are once again feeling the burden of COVID-19. In Windsor, Essex, 11 homes are in outbreak. That, coupled with additional restrictions because of Omicron and staff shortages, has made the situation for some especially bleak. Dale Molnar joins me in studio now with more on this. Dale, paint us a picture of what's happening inside long-term care homes right now.
Well, Katerina, some of the residents in the long-term care homes where there are outbreaks are locked down in their rooms. I spoke with the daughter of one of the residents who is locked down, and she says her dad needs more interaction and even calls it a violation of his civil rights.
So it's a pretty appalling conditions, actually.
Joël Lebert's dad, Donat, is a resident in the extended care home in Tecumseh. The home is one of 11 in the area experiencing a COVID outbreak. He is restricted to his room, so Lebert says it's very detrimental to his well-being.
The physiotherapist comes in and he does exercises in his chair, but essentially he has no physical exercise in his room, and doesn't go to the dining hall. It doesn't see anybody else other than the caregivers and the support workers that come in and out of his room.
Lebert says he's not getting the mental stimulation he needs.
Three things they need most are, that type of social interaction, mobility, and essentially, an ability to use your brain, right? So cognitive exercise.
John Scotland is the CEO of a company that runs several long-term care and other residences in southwestern Ontario, including Heron Terrace in Windsor. He says for now the outbreaks of the Omicron variant have not proven to be too severe, but he is concerned about the possibility of staff shortages. Right now, 6 of his staff outside of Windsor are isolating because they have come in close contact with COVID carriers.
We've spent the last week and through the weekend reaching out to additional agencies to make sure that our homes have multiple contracts in place in the event we need them. 4th doses of the vaccine are being administered to residents in long-term care homes in coming days as the vaccine comes available.
In long-term care, the population is substantively vaccinated, and so to that extent, that is one protective factor with regards to outbreaks in long-term care facilities.
We're really, hopeful that all of those measures, as well as certainly our outbreak management and our infection prevention and control team, all of that together, we're hoping that this stays fairly contained and we don't sort of have the experience in long-term care that we did, at the beginning of the pandemic.
Well, Katerina, while 11 outbreaks in the long-term care sector are concerning, it's worth pointing out that the number isn't as high as other points during the pandemic. Now, the medical officer of health is expecting COVID-19 will continue to rise over the week or so. And the worry there for long-term care homes is the possibility of more outbreaks and staff shortages. Katerina?
Thanks for this, Dale. CBC's Dale Molnar live in studio tonight. And 2 more people in Windsor, Essex have died from COVID-19. A man in his 70s and a woman in her 90s. That's according to the local health unit. And that's pushed the number of COVID-19 deaths in our region to 503. Hospitalizations are also up. As of today, 67 patients are in hospital because of COVID-19. Before the weekend, there were 49. Friends and families of the people who died in the Iran plane crash marked 2 years since the tragedy over the weekend. The plane had been shot down by the Iranian military. The incident, which the Iranian government called a mistake, killed 138 people with ties to Canada. Several of them were studying or working at the University of Windsor. And that includes Samira Bashiri, a research student in the Lab of Biomedical Sciences, Professor Lisa Porter.
Samira's dad actually came last year when things were opened up a little bit to get her things from her desk, and we hadn't touched anything. We sort of left everything, and then we got to meet him, talk to him. So that was tough time for the lab. But I think people are never going to be over it. We're never going to forget her.
Last year, the university gave out the first memorial scholarship to honor the students lost in the incident. And Windsor is in the midst of a cold snap, and COVID restrictions have shut down or limited access to some of the usual spots people turn to stay warm. It's placed Windsor's homeless community in an even more precarious situation, as many struggle to find a place to keep out of the cold. Ashta Shetty reports.
For many who are homeless, one of the few options to stay out of the cold is here at the old Windsor Waterworld location, which has been converted into a city-run shelter called H4. I asked residents how they felt about their limited options to stay warm.
We have to be out by, I think, 10 o'clock at the mission, or 9 o'clock at the mission after breakfast. And so I just come over here to Waterworld and pass my time by until supper time.
And it's just less resources that we can get to, like the library. We can't print things out. We can't get to a book. We can't go on the internet. It's just nuts.
But with the colder weather coming in, I find that a lot of people have been unable to get into the facility if it's full. For example, I stopped at the mission to speak with somebody today, and there was a few people that couldn't get in for lunch because of the cold temperatures and the restrictions.
The concerns have left some wondering about the need for more long-term options.
The tiny homes right now, the costs are on an average about $16,000. Why can't we buy a nice piece of land? Those tiny homes, they're not going to be anything grandiose, anything that a lot of other people would take pride in living in. But for a homeless person, a homeless couple, it would be a perfect accommodation.
Meanwhile, at the local Salvation Army, staff members are forced to close its doors to kick out male residents from 9 to 4 every day because of indoor gathering limits.
Public health will not allow us to have 2 men per room. So therefore, we had to take that extra man, if you can think about that, out of every room, and we placed him into an area called our chapel space. Now, our chapel space is a big room. If we were allowed to have 2 men per room, as we did pre-COVID, then that would give us that entire space to be able to have men stay and lounge around during the day.
Pinkson says they've converted that lounge space into sleeping areas, so they're no longer available during the day. He says they've notified the city that they're being forced to leave some residents out in the cold. The next nearest option for shelter for homeless men looking for warmth is walking distance away at the city-run shelter called H4. However, some people I spoke to said they've also at times been turned away from H4 because it too was too full. Ashta Shetty, CBC News, Windsor.
The cold temperatures can also pose a danger for pets. Veterinarians are reminding pet owners that winter weather means taking precautions when heading outdoors. While there's everything from dog boots to parkas out there, vets say owners still need to be observant and cautious. CBC video producer James Young got some tips.
The same issues that hit humans can hit animals in this cold weather. The biggest issue, though, is that they can't talk and tell us that they're cold. So it's up to us to watch for signs that they're not doing well outside. Those signs could be things like shivering, just like we would do, and very commonly with dogs is picking their paws up, and because their paws tend to get cold fastest, and so they do a little dance where they're holding a paw up or 2 paws up, and that's when we know it's time to take them inside.
Plus 30, minus 35 like today, we don't miss a day regardless. 30-second walks is the max we can do with the weather before their paws freeze up. Leave the truck running, locked of course, and then throw them in and they can warm up, and then back we go.
Just because you have booties for them and you have a jacket, it doesn't mean that they're not going to get cold. And when we dress, we're fully dressed. Dogs, you can never get them completely dressed, and there's always going to be some spots that are exposed and where they can be at risk for frostbite. Especially in dogs, we'll see it on paws occasionally. The other area that we see it a lot is on the ears, and that's in both dogs and cats. Frostbite won't show up for a half hour to an hour after the damage is actually done. So you'll look at their paw or at their ear tips and it looks perfectly normal, and then all of a sudden, maybe the next day you see that they've lost some hair on the tip of their ear, and then it's turning a different color. So by the time we recognize that, it's too late. Another important thing, a lot of people think, oh, he's really cold, I'm gonna put a heating pad around him, or I'm gonna put their paws in warm water. That makes things worse. Let them warm gradually inside, just like we do. If you do recognize changes that are indicative of frostbite, you should see your veterinarian. So we have to be smart about it. Even if they have bulky coats on and boots, they can still be prone to problems.
Our next story is one of intrigue and disappearing wealth. Investors say millions of dollars are missing in an alleged COVID-19 related Ponzi scheme. And also disappearing is the Toronto businessman accused of masterminding it. Lawyers and other shadowy figures can't find him or their money. Samantha Beatty has this exclusive story.
Businessman Mark E. Cohen is accused of stealing at least $12 million from more than a dozen Toronto area investors. He's facing 3 lawsuits and his whereabouts remain a mystery. He hasn't been seen at his North York home in months, according to documents filed in court, or this nearby office building where he registered his business. Some investors have turned to police and civil lawyer Justin Anisman.
As far as we're aware, he hasn't fled the country, but you're right, we haven't been able to locate him in person.
CBC News has learned others who invested have ties to illegal gambling rings in Woodbridge, and they've gone looking for him and his family members. They've made threats demanding their money back and Cohen's whereabouts. The lawsuits allege Cohen and other defendants took advantage of the pandemic-triggered vehicle shortage last year. He promised he'd use investors' money to resell cars to dealerships for huge profits. But the lawsuits say cracks appeared last summer when Cohen stopped making payments to investors.
We have not seen any evidence to suggest that this car scheme was in fact real, but rather that somebody was collecting this money and basically using this money to pay off investors, to trickle this money through.
Throughout the fall, investors became increasingly frantic trying to track down Cohen. One texted him to demand what was going on with a promised order of used cars from Quebec. Another investor says in an affidavit he discovered the TD bank accounts associated with Cohen's car business. And the money had been drained around the same time Cohen stopped responding to phone calls and texts.
My clients allege, at least as of this time, that no one has earned any profit from this scheme, that everybody are big losers.
Cohen hasn't filed a statement of defense and did not provide a comment for this story. Next month, lawyers will seek a so-called Mariva injunction against him.
It is very powerful if there's money in Canada because the banks are then required to disclose that information.
At this point, there's no indication where either the money or Cohen are. Samantha Beatty, CBC News, Toronto.
To sad news now in the entertainment world. Actor and comedian Bob Saget has died. The TV dad was familiar to many of us. He was discovered in his hotel room in Orlando, Florida yesterday. He had been performing there this weekend. Last night, fans began gathering outside the San Francisco home that was the setting for Saget's very successful sitcom Full House. A makeshift memorial of flowers and other mementos is growing on the street outside the house. The show ran 8 seasons beginning in 1987, and Saget played widowed father Danny Tanner. Saget also hosted the first version of America's Funniest Home Videos and toured as a successful stand-up comedian for years. Police say there are no indications that foul play or drugs were involved. Bob Saget was 65 years old. I grew up with Danny Tanner, so that one really hit home for me as well. Live look outside there. When we come back, Colette, she's here, she's back, she's returned. We'll chat with her in just a little bit. I'm so happy to welcome Colette Kennedy back with us. Now, Colette, we haven't seen you in a little while, and I know that you want to share a little bit about what's been going on, so talk us through this.
Well, I feel like, Katerina, there are many people, especially as we went through the holidays, who were experiencing the same problems with COVID. And I will say that it went through our whole household, 4 of us in that household. And what was just, and we were all sick. So, well, sorry, 3 of us were sick, 1 of us not quite so bad. And so I do think it's interesting. We hear a lot about how, this is milder, and we are definitely very grateful that for us it was milder in the sense we're talking about cold and flu symptoms, and we weren't sicker than that, but it still can kind of take a toll. And it was also an interesting process, Katerina, because I had tested negative on rapid tests because I thought I was starting to feel unwell and I wanted to be able to go visit my mom over the holidays. And then after 2 rapid tests a few days apart, and then my PCR was positive. So, I mean, so many different scenarios, right, that are going through. But again, we're grateful that we're all doing so much better.
Yeah, and I'm so glad that you mentioned that because so many people have seen that discrepancy with those rapid tests. And I also want to point out your hand, just to add insult to injury. What happened there?
Yes, it's like as soon as I was let out of the house, my doctor said I was safe. I was, not going to be harming anyone to go for some walks. I think it was the 2nd day I got out of the house, and I know better. I know better because I know what the weather is and I forecast it. But there was some ice under snow. Can happen to anybody. I know, and I slipped and I broke my wrist, which is just, I wanted to kick myself, but yeah, it happens. I want folks to be so careful. And, speaking of careful, we really have to be right now, because let's talk about the cold air that's in place. And what we're talking about here with our temperatures at -9 in Windsor, but we're talking minus double digits, Sarnia, and for folks in London, it's -12. And never mind just those temperatures, because of course we know we have the winds factoring in, so it does feel like -20 right now in Sarnia. Hey, Windsor, -17 with some of those strong winds still in place. Those will ease up, as you see here, by tomorrow morning, but that will be somewhat brief because then they're going to switch towards a more southerly direction and really be picking up and ramping up through the day tomorrow. But at least that will be pushing in some milder air. Not going to be mild overnight tonight. No question about that. And looking at those winds also driving some of those lake effects. So those squalls, there are some warnings still in place and winter weather travel advisories. And then much of the province to the east of us and north of us is looking at extreme cold weather alerts. So still some nasty driving there in those areas that are still within the warning. The watch, it has been upgraded, so that's why every area there was in pink. And then just having a look at what's happening in terms of our sky conditions. Sometimes it makes it just a little bit easier to handle the cold air when there's some sunshine to go along with it. So we do have a lot of that coming our way for tomorrow until that system gets in here Wednesday. Then that is when it will become overcast, and we'll be looking at the risk of some flurries into Wednesday as well. So just be aware that the sunshine tomorrow, although it's with the cold air, try and enjoy that. But really some dangerous conditions tomorrow morning with those strong wind chills. Now, overnight tonight, -14, and then just having a look at our temperatures into tomorrow, where we are talking about, we'll be lucky to get to that range of highs of -4 to -7. And that's what we have for you in that 5-day forecast. But at least just hang in there, folks. Wednesday, we do get to see things kind of warm up a little bit, even if it's a little short-lived, Katerina.
Some good news there. Thank you for that breakdown, and thanks so much for sharing your story as well, Colette. I'm so glad to see you back.
Yes, and I missed you. I missed everybody, so I'm so happy to be here. Thanks.
Oh, we've missed you too. We're so glad. Thanks, Colette. Now, when we come back, we do have some more news updates for you. Stay with us. Welcome back. A local bakery in Manitoba is trying to take a bite out of a national sales campaign by Tim Hortons. It has launched its own take on the donut giant's high-profile partnership with pop star Justin Bieber, Tim Biebs. Valley Bakery in Winkler is offering a 6-pack of its own donuts with flavors all picked by people with a very popular local name.
This sort of weird, silly idea came up, and they thought it was hilarious and a little bit dumb, and we decided this is a great idea. So we went for it, and the customers around here thought it was fantastic.
The Tim Weebs were selected by, of course, 6 guys with the same name. They were all contacted by the bakery through social media. Weeb is a very common surname around Winkler, which has a population of about 13,000 people. It's about 100 kilometers southwest of Winnipeg. Picture a sea creature shaped like a dolphin, but larger than an adult orca. Now that is the size of a fossil recently found in the East Midlands of England. Now what first looked like some big old rusted pipe turned out to be the long vertebrae of an, I'm going to try to say this, ichthyosaur. The 180-million-year-old fossilized remains were found by a team during a routine draining of a lagoon island. This specimen measures 10 meters, but the prehistoric predator was known to grow more than twice that length. Commonly known as sea dragons, these marine reptiles went extinct around 90 million years ago. That is it for CBC Windsor News. For more news, go to our website, cbc.ca/Windsor. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great night.